Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Richard Wynn, the CEO of Neex. Let's have a big round of applause.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, my speech today was really going to concentrate on the election of President Trump and in his impact from day one, and in particular his tariffs. And I've got a little bit of an apology to make because everything we prepared here has now disappeared because of the events of last week. But if we look at his reasons and his rationale and why he was elected euphorically. I think we can agree on his Make America Great agenda. And he made it crystal clear from the very, very start that his purpose was to stimulate the US economy, to settle trade imbalances, surpluses and deficits. In his opinion, he's always thought that the US has been taken for granted, that there have been far more imports to the US than there have been exports. And what are the reasons behind that? Well, clearly, China has taken advantage of the US for many, many years, and it's very attractive for US citizens to buy cheap, efficient Chinese products. And it's understandable. But let's go through the slides and see where the impacts are. Here we go. So, how has President Trump's economic policy shaped the market leading into 2025? Well, what it has done is created a lot of volatility and instability. Anybody, any trader, be they from an institutional background or a retail background, ideally you want a very clear policy. You need to know and focus on something that you can see is an opportunity for you. And yes, you can take the risks, but the volatility that he's created has created a lot of instability. Although it's creeping back a little bit now, we've got slightly more stable markets. Is market volatility a sign of strength or instability? For me, it's certainly showing a lot of instability at this moment in time. Initially, the stock markets and the trends, it caused a great deal of confusion. There have been wild swings. Investor sentiment and businesses and individual, are they optimistic or cautious? The key sectors affected are real estate, tech, and manufacturing. I'll give you a little example of the impact on US citizens. The knock-on effect. So if we were to look at the west coast of America, the ports that import from China, imports are down 30% on the same time as last year, which is bad. So you have dry shipping routes, and this could affect the whole shipping and freight industry. Then at the port itself, the individual who collects the products, who distributes it, he's got nothing to collect. So the knock-on effect into the local economy has also been very negative in the short term. But is this part of his policy? He knows that there's going to be a short-term hurt, but a long-term gain. He's certainly not the most diplomatic president we've seen, that's for sure, but is this what his intentions were? Here's the effect. So here's from the election there, from the S&P, and the stock markets. I think we're gaining a little bit more continuity and stability now, but there is always confusion and caution. Now, if we look at the actual, these are now, I do apologize, this is actually an old slide because everything changed this last week. The message he sent to China and subsequent dialogue with China, that has now changed. And when that happened, prior to this, we see the classic flight to safety and safe haven. The market was very, very long of gold. You will always see this when there's instability or uncertainty in an economy, you will always see a flight to gold. On Monday of this week, when he announced that the tariffs were gone with China for the next 90 days, gold immediately came down in value, and I believe that's a short-term trend at the moment where gold is depreciating in value, but bear in mind the market is incredibly long of gold. So these are some of the sectors there as well. Now, Another one that's out of the window, the United Kingdom. In the same week that that announced the tariffs were suspended, the United Kingdom and the US struck a trade deal. So everything changes. So we could say that his complete lack of diplomacy woke everybody up, and that previous governments within the US have been far too diplomatic and pussyfooted around, and everybody needed a good kick to achieve something. So yes, so with China and the United Kingdom, things have changed significantly. The European Union is always going to be an issue for President Trump. He does not like the European Union. He considers it predatory and that they've been taking the US for a ride for too long. He's not a big fan of supernaturals. And here's it, but again, a lot of these now may be changing rapidly because of his change in attitude over the last week. But these are the top trading importer to the US. Mexico has been hit really, really hard, especially for agricultural products, if they're imposing tariffs there. And this is how it was before and after. So in the Biden era, zeros, Canada, and look, since Trump, these are vast changes, and these are a real message. The United Kingdom, we can change this now because that's virtually gone. And the European Union, well, that's going to have to be debated and organized. And how does it affect this area? Well, he's on tour at the moment within the Middle East. He struck up some great deals with Saudi and Qatar. I've no doubt that he'll come to an arrangement in the rest of the region, and he's also turned quite pro-Syria, which has surprised a lot of people. Now, very interestingly, in the same week that all this happened, the United Kingdom struck a trade deal with India. And this has been long in the working. And India is not a totally dissimilar situation, and it's very, very protective of its own industries. Prior to the trade deal with the United Kingdom, if you wanted to export a car from the UK to India, India imposed a 100% tariff. But those tariffs are now gone. The most prestigious British car is Jaguar Land Rover, and it's no surprise that that's actually owned by an Indian company, Tata. So I think there's obviously a little bit of political play behind the scenes there, but that's a great thing for India and the United Kingdom. They've struck up a major trade deal that'll be worth billions to the United Kingdom. So diplomacy does work. It certainly does with civilized countries like the UK and India. If you approach it diplomatically, you can get results. Now this is all changed now. So we can see the rise in gold from March of this year and onwards, when it peaked all the way up there. This chart isn't up to date, but as I mentioned a little earlier, when he made his announcement that the tariffs will be suspended with China, the market's extremely long of gold. It's taken a dip, possibly a little bit more, but I think the trend will probably remain higher, especially in uncertain markets and volatility. So we're back to the part again at the beginning. Is market volatility a sign of strength or instability, uncertainty? I think it's all three of those. But for you as retail traders, I think it's more uncertainty than anything. And as a trader, and you want to look at a position, you want to acquire a commodity or a currency, take a long, hard look. Do your research. Don't rush into any decisions. Don't let anybody else persuade you what to do. It's very, very important that you enter your position, that you know exactly where you want to take your pain and your stop loss. Always try and intend to make 3 times more than you lose, and be very, very mindful that any economic statement, any economic release may kick you out of your position very quickly. Always educate yourself, and at Neex, we're always there to help you with our educational tools and our technology. So this has been a little bit brief, but I just wanted to say something about Trump and his diplomacy, his lack of diplomacy. It is seemingly taking effect in the market at the moment, and he's managed to get something done that he considers is good for America, that will revitalize and enthuse his economy. Time will only tell on that, but he's certainly set the world alight and given us a lot to think about. And that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.